Best of one or best of three? That's what we're talking about today on Jank Play TCG. My name's Landon, and here we play Jank. And so the question is, what's better, right? And I don't think that's actually a question that can be answered or should be answered. I kind of think of it as just two different flavors. Some people are going to prefer best of ones. Some people are going to prefer best of three. Some people will even prefer best of fives. There's just different number of people that will prefer a different number of games within a match. So to understand this, I think first I need to explain how best of one is you play one game against someone, and then result of that game is whoever won, whoever lost, right? Best of three against someone is you play until someone wins at least 2 games, right? However, we are also timed in tournaments. So that leads to tiebreaker rules and just the possibility of tying in general. But best of three is you play a game, at least 2 games. If you won both, match is over. If your opponent won both, match is over, they won. If you won one, then they won one, then you gotta play a third game. And as I mentioned, these are timed rounds. That third game is usually under a very strict time limit that you have to kind of rush through. You have to play quickly. And that leads to some things. But first, let's just go ahead and jump into best of one. The benefits that I see coming from best of one are games are quicker because you're only playing one game. You're not playing at least 2 games plus possibly a third. Games are going to be quicker, and it also offers up surprises being a viable option. Surprising your opponent not knowing what they're playing against, gives you an advantage, but also gives them an advantage in that sort of sense of like surprises are a lot easier to pull off. There are certain decks, and I put Zoroark here for a reason. I think Zorobox, as fun as the deck is, I think it would be beneficial for it to be in a best of one format, because then you can surprise your opponent. Your goal is to get a bunch of cards in the discard pile so Zoroark can change into them so that you can select the best attacker for the situation. And in best of ones, your opponent's not going to know what attacker is coming, and it's going to be harder for them to play around that, especially early game when they're trying to set up, and you're trying to set up Zoroark. It's an interesting conversation at the least, but I think surprises work a lot better in best of ones. Thirdly, it favors consistency and counters. So it favors consistency in the fact that if your deck is very consistent, you're going to get what you need more often during the best of ones. And it favors counters in the sense of if your deck is built to counter things, very much like a Zorobox deck, you're going to be able to take advantage of that because your opponent's not going to know what's coming and not be in the best of situation to try to prevent your counters from taking advantage, right? So I see those benefits, as well as you get to play more matches overall. Now, as I said, best of three, you play 2 to 3 games within a match, and a match is against a single opponent. So best of ones, you're going to play more matches, you're going to play against more opponents, and see a larger variety of decks, much quicker, in my opinion. And then the final benefit that I've listed here is there's no reason to scoop. You might as well play it out. And I think that is the biggest benefit. Never give up, never surrender is what I almost wrote for all of you Galaxy Quest fans. But no reason to scoop. I personally do not like going into, or especially watching these tournaments, and watching people just scoop to their opponents. It's a little frustrating, I prefer seeing decks play it out, because you might not have the best matchup against this person doesn't mean you can't win. I did not prepare this for my camera. Okay, I'm moving my camera. And yeah, I think that'll be better. So just play it out. You know, it teaches not only the people watching, but also can teach yourself about your deck in different ways. On this channel, I only play best of ones because that's how PTCGL works, and I kind of like it, you know? Every game is something new, something fresh, and something I may not expect. And that's kind of how I like playing TCGs in general, and so, you know, yeah, not to jump ahead, but there is some benefits to best of ones, but I do need to mention the drawbacks. So I only put 2 drawbacks here, and I'm sure there's more, but bad hands. Bad hands can really mess you up. If you just start bad and you draw nothing, you can lose. You know? Last weekend, I went to locals, and I was matched up against a junior because there was only, like, you know, 6 of us there. And so I got matched up against her, and it was just terrible. I had 4 turns in the game. I was playing Spide Ops because I haven't built a physical deck of anything new yet. And first round, I get Spide Ops, first turn, I get Spide Ops, Tarantula with an energy on there, and ready to go, right? And next turn, I get 2 Spide Ops out. You know, it's awesome. Like, that's so cool. And a Choice Belt, and I KO Pokemon V. And then next turn, I KO another Pokemon V. And then the next turn, I KO another Pokemon V. And that's it. 4 turns. That's it. That's the game. That is terrible. I don't like those situations. I felt terrible for my opponent. The other drawback here is bad matchups. If you are playing Lugia and you draw up your hand and, you're playing against Miraidon, they're probably going to win. This is a bad matchup for you. You need to get Dunsparce out immediately. And Lugia actually has an answer to weakness in Dunsparce. A lot of decks don't. If you just open up your hand or start the game and your opponent is countering your primary attacker, through weakness, that's a bad matchup, and you're probably not going to win this. Maybe you will. Like I said, never give up, never surrender. But those bad matchups can happen. And in best of threes, it changes it a bit. So let's talk about best of threes. First off, it's longer. It takes longer to get through matches because you're playing more games against the same opponent. So it takes longer for it to play out. And some people prefer that. Some people prefer how long it is. There is a skill involved in reserving your energy for particular reasons and that kind of stuff. Second benefit is learning your opponent's deck over time. First game against someone is a discovery period. Not only are you trying to win, but you are also discovering how their deck functions and what they're going to be focusing on. This is very beneficial against Lost Zone decks because they start comfy. Oh boy, it could be any number of things. But as the game goes on, okay, so they're playing Raikou for hitting lightning weakness. I don't have lightning weakness. I'm good there. Oh, they're playing Giratina. Giratina can hit hard, but it has certain drawbacks. If I can gust that up, it can mess up their energy acceleration, that kind of stuff. Like, there's a certain effect of learning an opponent's deck and next game taking advantage of that, and the game after that trying to maximize that advantage as much as possible. So learning your opponent's deck is definitely a benefit that you have in best of threes. It favors explosive starts, and I got to preface this with lowers benefits of a quick win, because we've seen it a few times at NAIC this weekend. I'm recording this Saturday morning, just because last night this video kind of struck me, and this is my first opportunity to record. But you see, I saw it a few times where someone just had an explosive start and their opponent's like, it's so unlikely I'm going to win this, and you know what? they're playing this deck. I know this deck. I don't need to worry about learning it over time, right? So I'm just going to scoop. And so it favors explosive starts, but a quick win is not as good because you're going to have another game. You're going to have another game in this match. If they win, you're going to have another game in this match. So while it favors explosive starts, it also lowers the effectiveness of that explosive start, if that makes any sense. An explosive start can really just take over this one game, which is great. And while that can happen best of ones, there's no reason to scoop in best of ones. In best of threes, there are reasons to scoop. So, yeah. Leading to our next benefit of knowing when to scoop is a skill. But I question if it's something that we want to encourage. Is this something that we want people to be skillful in? Is it something that we want people to be timing themselves, having a good internal clock to know when a particular, when you reach the 30-minute mark of a, best of three, to know when you're reaching the end of the time limit to maybe, put yourself in a situation to run out of time, to run out the clock. So knowing when to scoop is a skill, and knowing when to scoop can be a benefit in best of threes. Some drawbacks: risk of ties. In best of ones, you're very unlikely to go ties, even though rounds would definitely be timed. They're timed to a point where most likely you're not going to run out of time, In best of threes, you're definitely running into that, and we definitely see that in Pokemon, where people tie quite frequently, and ties can really mess up people. So we have the risk of ties, because you don't want ties, you want wins, and if you can't get wins, then you want ties, but you want the win, right? And if both players want the win, that means neither of them want the tie. You can intentionally tie against your friend or whatever, but that's not the risk. The risk is running into a tie when you don't want it. And it just takes longer. Best of threes just take longer. They have to time out these matches so that you can go to a third game, but they don't want the time to be so long that now it's disruptive to the organization and running of the tournament. They gotta get match results. They've got to get the new pairings. They got to let you find your new pairing and start the next match. Less total matches being played is part of it taking more time, because so much time has to be devoted to a match. You are playing less matches. That makes Top Cut a lot more competitive, makes those wins more important, those ties more riskier, and you're not seeing as many decks, you're not playing against as many people, you're not meeting as many people, and TCGs are a social thing, so I think that's very important to keep in mind. Some debatable aspects here is the higher skilled player wins. Now, I see a lot of people throwing that out for the reason why best of threes is player. The better and the higher skilled player is going to win a best of three more often than, a best of one. But I think over time, that doesn't really matter as much. If you are playing, 5 best of threes versus 10 best of ones, I think the higher skilled player is going to win still more matches in a best of 10, best of 1, than, as best of 5, or best of 3, 5 matches sort of thing. So I think over time, that really falls apart, because you're still playing games, you're still, and the higher skill player is going to take in account the best of 1 situation and the best of 3 situation and bring the better deck, right? And play it how they need to take advantage in that situation. So higher skilled player wins is debatable either way, in my opinion. How important is the meta in best of ones and best of threes? We kind of touched this on the earlier, on the above comment, but I still think it is important here. How important is the meta in a best of one? Knowing what the field could be and bringing your counters, bringing the one card tech that can take on this card and that kind of stuff, and not just accepting I'm going to lose to this deck, that's fine, whatever, sort of thing? Or do you accept that I'm going to lose against this one particular deck more often because you're playing best of one, or you're playing best of three, or however, this goes? How important the meta is to each of those types of tournaments, I think really changes. Next up, we have deck builders versus pilots. Is a deck builder going to have an advantage in best of one? Is a pilot going to have an advantage in best of threes? Knowing how to play your deck versus building your deck to do certain things. And of course, if you're skilled at both, you're going to have an advantage there. I think I'm more of a deck builder than a pilot. I could see arguments where I'm more of a pilot than a deck builder because of my decks are kind of wonky, but best of one versus best of three. Deck builders versus pilots. It's all up for debate, right? It is debatable. Now, this is the next part. This next part is interesting, right? Because how does Japan do it? I didn't really have time to research how Japan does it. I hear they do best of ones, but I also have heard that their top cut's best of three, so it's a mixture sort of thing. But just hearing that Japan does best of one tournaments, they have certain tournament structure where they have best of ones. They have a lot more players going, which means a lot more money for the organization, organizers, which means a lot more tournaments can be held and ran and that kind of stuff, which is better for the overall game health. Hearing that Japan does best of ones, and the game it is designed in Japan, you could argue the game it's designed for the best of one format in Japan. Right? Maybe. I don't know. We have slightly different formats than Japan, as our release schedule is slightly different than Japan, but in Japan, if the designers of the game are constantly playing in a best of one format, and that is what is being played in Japan, and that is what they are mostly focused on, you could argue the game is designed for best of ones. But you could also argue that no game is designed for best of one, best of threes. It's just what's better for the players, and what's better for the tournament organizers, and blah, 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 right? So, how I would prefer it is probably a mixture of best of ones and best of threes. I would love it to start a tournament as a best of one. Let's say you play 10 best of one matches, and you have to win half those in order to advance to the best of three section, day 2, or whatever, right? I would kind of prefer that, where you start the tournament in best of one, and you get to play a ton of matches against a ton of different people, say, Swiss rounds, all that stuff, and you get to just play against a bunch of different decks. Cool. Then we switch over to best of threes and continue this switch round, right? And then we cut to a top cut, which is still best of three. I don't think we should go to best of fives. I think that gets a little ridiculous in how long it's going to take. I understand some people see that as, oh, that will guarantee the better skilled player definitely wins because there's more games that they have to win, blah, 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 right? Not that I'm trying to minimize your opinion, but I just think that's unrealistic. It's going to take too long. Best of three is probably as long as we want this to take, right? So really the question is best of one or best of three. So start best of one. Give those people the advantage. Don't let deck switching going into best of three. So your deck has to perform well in best of one. Win at least half your games. I don't think that's, expecting too much of a best of one series. Winning half your games. That's it. You gotta win 5 games in 10 rounds, right? 10 matches, win 5 of them. I think that's pretty reasonable because when people are like, how do you know when a deck is tournament ready? I often say, it's gotta win 66% of the time. Because if you're winning 2/3 out of the time in a best of 3 format, well, that's 2 out of 3 times, right? So you're kind of winning those best of 3s, which is pretty good. Because you're not going to run into a deck that wins 90% of the time that often, right? You're going to run into players that win particular decks, but not a deck that wins that, right? So in best of ones, if you can win half your matches, right, that's 50%. And I think that's pretty good. And then those people that are able to pull that off, go into the best of threes, where it's a bit more competition and a bit longer competition, and you have those benefits of the best of three, but you also have the benefits of the best of one early on, and you're playing the same deck, so you need to make sure your deck is able to play in both those situations. I think that's what would be a lot of fun, right? Seeing more players early on is really cool, and then later on having the best of three, so that we can start getting up to the tippy top and we have more time for those best of threes, right? We see plenty of times we are running out of time with best of threes because neither player wants to admit defeat. And it can just take a long time. So we minimize the pool of players by basically half in best of three. Because the best of one, we do, say, 10 rounds, then we cut half of those players, so now those top players that won 50% of their games are able to take their time and play out these matches, where the players that weren't able to win 50% can go do side events and whatnot, be more active in the community. I don't know, I just see this as being very beneficial, and I know other people are going to say, well, as soon as you lose 6 matches, you're out in best of one. And it's like, yeah, if you lose 6 matches in best of 3, you're most likely out as well. I mean, I've seen top cuts where it's like, if you lost 2 matches out of 12, you're out, So we've got to make a cut somewhere. And I just think that is a nice number to cut at, right? You could lose 5 matches and just go on an insane win streak and still win half your matches. We're putting it at 50%. If you want to go 11 matches, make it 6 wins or something like that. That would be a harsher cut, but, or would it? No, it wouldn't be as harsh of a cut. But, you know what I mean? There's different ways you can format that. So that's kind of how I would like to see it. Why? Skill in changing environment and skill in adapt. I think that's basically the same thing I said before, in the fact that you have to play best of 1 and best of 3, and keeping the same deck, not deck switching. I don't think deck switching should be a thing in tournaments. I know some tournaments do it, but I don't think it should be a thing. So, yeah, I think that skill in taking the same deck from a best of 1 format to a best of 3 format is important, and I think that could lead to the better players being on top, being able to do that, make that switch. I think that just leads to the better players obviously rising to the top. And no one is left behind, because if you do early best of 1s and it's Swiss, people can play all 10 rounds and they just get, of best of 1, and they just get to play more games, and that's awesome. Where best of 3s, after like your 3rd loss, you're not making top cut. There's a lot of motivation lost there, So I think it's important for no one being left behind in best of 1s, and then you have a cut there. And you just say, okay, if you didn't win 50% of your matches, you're out. That eliminates 50% of players. Where in the same amount of time, best of 3, 4 matches, 5 matches, it's going to be questionable how many people you're cutting, right? Probably people are going to be in that situation where like, well, maybe I don't drop yet. Maybe this, maybe that, And so best of 1 early ons just leads to faster games, more games, no one left behind in that early phase, right? So now I want to know what you prefer and why. I have a poll on the community tab of the YouTube channel, Jank TCG. Be sure to vote in that poll and comment why you are voting the way you are. How would you run a tournament if you were organizing this type of event? And as always, thank you so much for the support. I'm having to leave my job with nothing lined up due to injuries and stuff. In a lot of pain constantly every day. My meds are changing more frequently than some people eat. So, lots of things are going on. So, as always, I just thank you for the support of this channel. Helps keep me motivated. I love doing this stuff. And I love how far this channel has come. We're almost at 250 subscribers. Past couple days, just like 5 people subscribed. And I love seeing that. And I just while my previous YouTube channel that I've done had 1,000 subscribers before I deleted it, and it only took a year, this one's growing a lot slower, but it's not using a new game to launch out of, right? I used Transformers TCG to launch that channel. That's all I did for the channel. For the longest time, I tried to do Marvel Champions, and I just couldn't do it with work and a YouTube channel and all that stuff. I had to delete it. I wasn't going to do anything with it. And now rebuilding a new channel, almost at 250, but on a game that has a fan base that I'm not like jumping in and being like, you know, early adapters, come check me out. Like, I don't know. I just appreciate you guys. And I really appreciate the support you show the channel and all that stuff. So, thank you. Thank you. I should move back my camera so I don't forget. But go ahead and like this video. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of this awesome content. I am going to be looking into other games. I know it's a Pokemon channel. I never set out to be a only Pokemon channel. Just Pokemon is important to me. I've got tattooed on me, you know? Pokemon's important to a lot of people. It's important to me. That was my initial focus. I was going to jump into Digimon. I was going to jump into One Piece. I was going to jump into other things. But I have a digital focus with this channel because I can't afford a lot of paper, especially since I have to quit my job. Man, this ankle injury has been going on for 2 years. Anyways, lots of personal stuff here at the end. Sorry if you're not interested in that, but go ahead and jump in the Discord where you'll get more personal information, or you'll just chat with awesome people that are in that Discord and see what decks I'm working on and possibly what decks will be featured on the channel. Tomorrow's deck, honestly, because they unbanned a lot of cards, I have to revisit my decks I've been working on, and things need to change. So, a lot of these ability blocking things, while they weren't major to my decks, they do change the deck in some fundamental ways that I have to revisit. So, I don't know what I'm going to be playing tomorrow. I have to record it tonight, though. I'll be testing decks as I watch NAIC, North America International Championships, which look awesome. And I know my wife is super excited about Alex Shermancy's list of the crazy birds that she calls it, the unified wings, whatever it's actually called. I don't know. Unity wings, I think. Yeah. And I should just end this. So until next time, keep playing Jank.